father fatally shoots his daughter after getting into an argument about Donald Trump. And as it stands right now, it doesn't look like he's going to face any charges. In this video, I'm going to break down how and why that's possible. Welcome to Criminal Motives. My name is Matthew Pfeiffer. I'm a therapist, coach, author, and on my channel, I give my thoughts and reactions to different things that are happening in the news and also in true crime. If you enjoy that type of content, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're notified every time I upload a new video. With that being said, let's break down a couple of different videos. First, a video from an attorney, and then after that, I'm going to play a video of the body cam immediately after the incident. And then I'll give you my thoughts after.
My understanding of this case is that this is a UK-based family. They were all originally in the UK, and when this daughter was very, very young, her father ended up moving to Texas. And in January of 2025, she came here to visit him, and he was living in Prosper, Texas at the time. She came over here with her boyfriend, who's also from the UK, to visit him a few days before the Trump inauguration, and they end up getting in an argument, and a political argument of some kind. Based on the boyfriend's statements, it sounds like during that initial argument, she had said something along the lines to him about, how would you feel if I was a victim of sexual assault or sexual violence? And his response was, I wouldn't really care. I have two other daughters in this house. So it sounds like a very tense, very horrible argument to be having with your father. And then it sounds like some time passes and the TV is on and there's some sort of news coverage about firearms and guns. And again, this creates a conversation between father and daughter, and he decides to take her into the bedroom to show her his firearm, which is a semi-automatic Glock. And then at that point, he says he can't remember and he doesn't know if his finger was on the trigger or not, but we do know that the gun goes off and shoots her in the chest and kills her. A few days ago, and this is February 2026, we got an autopsy and a report from the coroner in the UK, which is very unusual. But that coroner found that this was criminally negligent manslaughter case, that this was negligent behavior that led to her death. That is more information that a medical examiner or a coroner would say in the United States. But it does sound like that was the ruling for the UK coroner, which is a big deal. So the coroner's ruling from the UK is damaging because that coroner found that this was negligence due to the fact that he didn't have a safety on the weapon. I don't know if the coroner ruled this, but he had been drinking during the day. So that is, another negligent act. And then to be holding a firearm. And he didn't even check for bullets in the weapon before clearly pointing it at his daughter. That's the basis for the coroner finding that there was negligence in this particular case. However, that is a UK coroner. So that has no bearing on what has happened in Texas or what was presented to the grand jury or anything that's happened so far. So the unusual aspects of this case, there's honestly quite a few. One of the biggest ones is the fact that this is a man that struggled with alcohol throughout his life. He had been to rehab previously. On the day of the shooting, he admits that he had had 17 ounces of white wine when this actually occurs. So I think it's safe to say there was possibly some sort of intoxication. The officer does say that he smelled alcohol on his breath. And look, we have two very different decisions from two different countries. We have our country and we have a very conservative state finding that there wasn't even probable cause to indict him for manslaughter. And then we have a coroner from the UK saying this is clearly criminal negligence. And those are two very different outcomes with also two cultures that have very different beliefs about guns. So I think the reason he essentially is getting away with it is it's symptomatic of a very conservative state in a very conservative county that chose not to indict him. And I think our political climate is something we need to think about when addressing and looking at this case, and the fact that they would not even indict him on a manslaughter or that we know of a criminally negligent homicide. So in Texas, there's manslaughter, which is a much more serious charge and has potential prison time as an outcome. But there's also criminally negligent homicide, which is a state jail felony. And I don't know if this prosecutor presented this to a grand jury or not, the criminally negligent homicide. But if they didn't, they can still go back and try to see if a grand jury would indict him on that particular charge. Now, I don't think they're going to. And it sounds like they convinced this grand jury somehow that this was an accident. But as a lawyer in Texas, I have seen individuals indicted for manslaughter for running red lights and causing a traffic accident that results in a death. To get an indictment, we're talking about probable cause. That is the burden of proof to get an indictment. And the grand jury didn't even find probable cause, which I find pretty shocking. So as someone who's been a prosecutor and is now a defense attorney, I find this very surprising. Again, grand juries are private, so we don't know exactly what was presented to the grand jury that led to them making this kind of decision. But I have seen people indicted for manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide for a whole lot less than the evidence and the information that we have about this case. And honestly, if I was her mother and her family in the UK, I would be devastated by this result, that there's no accountability being taken here, and there's no accountability for this man.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack, but before we get into it, let's watch the body cam footage of what happened immediately after the shooting.
No. So she was just about to go to the airport.
Who is she to y'all?
That's our daughter. Okay. It's my daughter.
Okay.
And we were getting ready to go to the airport, and we were talking about guns. And she said, "You got a gun?" I said, "Yes." I got it out, and it just went off as she stood there. As I pulled it out, it went off.
Okay.
It must have been, obviously.
Did you put the gun on the bed?
I put it on the bed straight away, yeah.
Where was it at?
It was in the bedside cabinet.
Okay, you have like a little, you just keep it in there?
In a locked box. Okay. And we took it out to look, and just as I picked it up, it went off.
Okay. Ma'am, I'll have you step over here, and we'll all come over here. Okay. Are they involved?
Can somebody go?
Yeah, we'll get it figured out. I got you. Yep. Here, I just want to see, so if they have to come out, because there's like
Because
9 of them.
they're about to go back to England, so she's not
She's not going there.
Okay. Are you?
This is her boyfriend.
Okay, boyfriend. Okay.
Baylor Scott White, please here and making me all three.
Yep, we got it. More than likely, honestly, she's probably going to go to Plano, based on the injury. It'll be THR Plano.
Okay.
More than likely. I'll tell you here shortly.
Do you know if she's breathing or?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
So, okay. Hey, Lucy, can somebody come in?
Today's outcome has finally given Luce her voice back. After what has been an unrelenting year of deep shock, grief and fight. Fight with quiet yet focused, steely determination to allow Lucy to speak her truth in the only way that she now can. At an inquest, whilst we recognise that an unlawful killing outcome has been decided in a coroner's court and not a criminal one, we welcome the coroner's conclusion and thank her for exploring all of the evidence fairly, as fully as she could, and fearlessly for Lucy.
All right, welcome back. And before we get into it, I just want to say that I know this topic can get very heavy, polarizing, and intense. This is the reason why I partnered with BetterHelp. If you're considering therapy, be sure to check out the links in the description box down below. When you use the links in the description box down below, you'll get 15% off your first month of therapy. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. So obviously there is a lot to unpack here with everything that has happened. One of the things, and this one hits really close to home because I am not, for those of you who don't know, I live in Dallas, Texas. Prosper is probably about 30 minutes from me. I'm very familiar with the area. Grew up in that area, played basketball in the area, played, all kinds of sports, know people who currently live and work in that area. So this one hits very close to home. As a gun-friendly state as Texas is, and I grew up here, lived here majority of my life, and I've also lived in areas that were not gun-friendly states or cities like in DC and New York. And I'm still shocked that there's no indictment here. I'm still shocked that there is no manslaughter or criminally negligent charge here. Now, to give you some perspective, Prosper is a very affluent area. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that someone would escape an indictment or escape a manslaughter charge or a criminally negligent charge. But just like the attorney said in one of the videos, I'm shocked that there's no indictment here. Now, I've also served on a grand jury before. And the barrier of entry, for lack of a better term, to get an indictment versus to find someone guilty in a trial is very, very different. And in my opinion, this should have been an easy indictment. Now, when we talk about indictment, is there a possibility that this could be manslaughter or criminally negligent? The fact that he was drinking on this day, and this is someone who has been in rehab before. Now, I'm also a former substance use therapist. If you are drinking to a point where you've been to rehab before, I have a hard time believing that you basically only had 1 or 2 glasses of white wine. It's far more likely that this person was drunk as a skunk, right? And we also have the argument. We have some potential motivation and things like that. And I have a hard time understanding how these two, especially after that heated argument, ended up in a room by themselves with a gun, right? So he's not showing it off to her boyfriend who was visiting from out of town. He's not showing it off to the rest of the family, but just the two of them. There's a lot of things about this case that just genuinely don't make any sense. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you're notified every time I upload a new video. I upload new content on this channel multiple times per day, and I talk about different things that are happening in the news and also in true crime. Also, be sure to check out my Substack linked in the description where I talk about different things that might not make it to the news. With all that being said, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. You guys have a good one.